Broadcasting from the Symphony studio in Marietta, Georgia, it's time for the Technology Harmony podcast, brought to you by Symphony Technology Solutions. Tune in every week as we spotlight the very best minds in our industry. Now, here are your hosts.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to the very first episode of the Technology Harmony podcast, brought to you by Symphony Technology Solutions. I'm your host, the social media marketing manager here at Symphony, Katie Galley. In the first few episodes of this series, we speak with the top thought leaders in the commercial real estate space to gain some insight into the impact COVID-19 is having on this industry and what we might do on the back end to help mitigate the damage. In the Symphony studio with us today, we have the Senior Director of Resident Technology Services at RealPage, Steve Sadler. How are you doing, Steve?
I'm doing well, thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for stopping by the studio and sharing your story with us today.
Sure, happy to.
Awesome. So Steve, just to kind of jump in, could you tell us a little bit about your professional journey and how you got the job that you have today?
So I think I started in telecom back in 1985, so that gives you a little bit of a hint of how old I am. I got my start designing broadband local area networks for a company here in Atlanta called Allied Data. It's quite interesting. I learned a lot about tech. I came into it with a CAD background and then learned a lot about telecom while I was there. So then over the course of the years, I've worked at several different design firms, learning more and more about telecom design. And then I actually got into the multifamily business in 1999 when I went to work for Post Properties, also here in Atlanta. And I spent probably 15 years, I think, with Post Properties, helping them implement their technology initiatives, also managing their ancillary services division and utility billing. So I came to RealPage almost exactly 6 years ago, and so kind of moved from being inside the owner realm of multifamily to being a consultant and helping other owners implement their technology solutions. So overall, been in the business about 35 years, I guess.
Wow. So you've obviously garnered a lot of experience and expertise in growing now into the multifamily. And so, Steve, can you dive into a little bit about what RealPage does?
Sure. So Resident Technology Services is a division within RealPage, and our goal is to be an independent technology consultant to owners and developers to help them implement their technology initiatives as they're developing new multifamily communities. So we help them with their telecom needs, we help them with their access control and CCTV requirements, and help them with their audio-visual requirements for their common area spaces. So our goal is to help them, within their budgets, help them deploy as much useful technology that's predominantly resident-facing, but helps them sort of market their properties as being more forward-thinking on their technology front.
Okay. And so then specifically as a senior director of resident technology, where do you fall in that space? So how do you kind of fit in with RealPage and what do you do on that end?
Right. So primarily my focus is the luxury multifamily space. So I manage all the projects. I'm the point person for each project that we bring in the house. So I help manage the design effort in terms of putting out deliverables as we go through the construction process, coordinating with the architect, the MEPs, landscape, all those various sundry consultants within the design phase. Also, I help manage the contract negotiation side of things. We negotiate contracts with service providers for, who's going to serve the property. And then we also do construction administration. So once the designs are done and construction has begun, we go out on site and make sure that everything's being installed properly, and then we're helping to coordinate all the efforts that relate to the installation of technology.
And so, with all these efforts and these different arms that you're leading within RealPage, clearly, with everything that's going on in the world today with COVID-19, I wonder, Steve, specifically, what do you see as some major impacts, or what are major impacts that COVID-19 is having on RealPage, on your industry specifically?
Yeah, so it's been kind of interesting. We probably on average, we run between 160 to 180 active projects at any given time. And most of our projects are going to last anywhere from 18 months to 24 months. So they're obviously in various stages of development. What we've seen currently so far, aside from the obvious of more folks working from home, so a lot of our design consulting calls are, everybody on the call is basically working from their house. Construction is still continuing on with the projects that were already underway. I think the only real impact that we've seen is that projects that are not yet funded, so ones that haven't really gone through the capital process of getting funding yet, many of them have been paused or they've been at least slowed down a little bit. We feel like they're going to pick back up once this issue kind of resolves itself, but one never knows.
Right. I mean, that's true. So kind of looking forward to the future then, and as things kind of return to that sense of normalcy and thinking, of course, that these projects should pick back up. What kinds of adaptations do you see as possibly needing to be made in the industry specifically or with RealPage as these projects, begin to go underway again?
So for us, RealPage, we were already kind of COVID compliant because we all work from home.
Okay, there you go.
Not going to really change our way of doing things very much. Although we obviously are not going on site anymore to do construction administration, which is a little bit of a challenge. But I think we'll resolve that over time. It's been interesting. We've not had a ton of conversation about it, but we have had some clients talk to us about, sort of helping them brainstorm on ideas to make their properties, I don't want to say virus proof, but sort of look at things that might help in terms of being a cleaner environment. So maybe looking at how do we handle access to the building? Do we do different kind of door handle? Do we do, more automated doors so people aren't touching things so much? So sort of looking at things where we sort of help people sort of be able to move about the property and live in the property without essentially touching every little thing that they come up to.
Yeah. And that's incredibly interesting to think about. I mean, because it's true, you touch so many different things if you're walking into a property and specifically in multifamily. And so do you have your eyes on any technologies or anything in particular that you might start moving towards to start make those shifts?
Well, I think some stuff is kind of already available, particularly in terms of access control. So, for instance, there's a lot of technology that is allowing residents now to continue to use their key fobs like they always have, which they're just waving in front of something.
Right.
Or now a lot of Bluetooth compatible devices that allow them to use their phone.
Okay.
Yeah. So I think a lot of that stuff is sort of inherently already a little bit less touchy. You're able to do things without, putting a key in a door. I think the trick is going to be, door hardware handles. How do you structure doors so that people don't have to touch them as much? Or if you are touching them, there may be of a material that's somewhat antimicrobial or something like that.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, right, that makes a lot of sense, specifically with things that you have to touch. But you're right, it seems that those things might already be on the way to be mitigated or already are because of the access of smartphones and different applications that are readily available.
Right. And I think the other thing, too, that folks are talking about is also HVAC systems. What types of filtration systems, might be put into the building to help clean the air a little bit better and sort of, because you're talking about, a community with literally hundreds of people living on top of each other in an apartment community. So it's sort of hard to socially distance,
Right.
particularly in the corridors and the common areas. I mean, they're relatively large, but still. So I think there's probably going to be some efforts into looking at different HVAC systems to allow the air to be, filtered a little bit better, maybe recycling fresh air into the building a little more frequently.
So at RealPage then, have you started to actively look specifically for those HVAC systems? What do you see as that kind of change in trend there or forward moving progress in pursuit of that with HVAC in particular?
Yeah, so that really probably doesn't necessarily fall under our scope in terms of design, but we certainly, what does fall under our scope would be, the technology packages that would control those systems. So for instance, thermostats in the units or possibly sensors that might monitor, those devices, maybe monitor air quality at some point. I mean, we're not doing that today, but I'm assuming there'd probably be the potential to do that at some point. So yeah, we would definitely want to stay on top of the technology integration to those systems and how they're monitored and managed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that makes a lot of sense then. I mean, looking forward to then the technologies that might be able to monitor that. And so then Steve, kind of holistically looking at this progress that we're making and trying to change the way things are because of the COVID-19 and just trying to mitigate things on the back end. What is something, or do you see something all of the players in your space can do to maybe help each other at this time, or looking forward to the future might be able to help on the back end?
Oh, wow. I'm not sure I have an answer for that yet. I think this is it's definitely a new wrinkle in life. And so I think there's going to be this, you know, we'll see if it's a long-term adaptation. I think that's going to be the interesting piece of this. Are we going to change human behavior over time, or is this going to be kind of a blip, you know, in the scheme of things, and that we sort of forget about it 5 or 10 years from now? So I think that's going to be the trick, is to see how much of what we're implementing right now in terms of social distancing and working from home and all these other things that are changing our lives in this short period of time, how much of that sticks, how long does it last, and then does that give rise to technology innovation to sort of accommodate this new way of life? Mm-hmm. And I think that's really going to be the trick, is to see, you know, how does this impact the development of technology over time? And then once we do have different technologies, how does that impact multifamily, and how do we manage those technologies? And I think what we'll probably see is, over time, we're starting to see it now, but I think over time we're going to see more owner managed networks, which we didn't used to see as much in the past. And so I think a lot of new developments are going to have, you know, an owner managed and owner defined network within the building to control the technologies that they're trying to implement. So I think we're seeing a little bit of a move. This might accelerate the move. We're seeing it already, but I think we might see it accelerate, assuming we, you know, come up with these new technologies to sort of adapt to a coronavirus world.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And so Steve, for you, I mean, with all the experience that you've had in the multifamily space, and I know you just said with these might move more towards owner management and just kind of making that shift. But as far as the trends have gone so far in the multifamily space, and I know, of course, this is an unprecedented time, so you can't really know what is to happen. But do you have any kind of, I guess, insight or based on your past experience, which way we might start to move, or specifically with RealPage or within the multifamily space, as far as the technologies go, what direction we might go, or just kind of how people react, you know, just your own insight or personal opinion on that. Sure.
Yeah, I think, you know, I'd say when I first got into multifamily back in 1999, a lot of the drive for technology was really to sort of get the service providers who were providing services like cable, phone, and internet to the building. It was more a drive to get them to fund and install the technology systems within the building. You know, access control systems were pretty primitive and rudimentary, and they were sort of a separate thing. There was a little bit of AV going on, but, you know, it was mostly just sticking a TV on the wall somewhere and putting a set-top box behind it and making it look pretty for the leasing tour. I think over the years, we have seen a move from less service provider, you know, provided and funded infrastructure in a building to more owner provided and managed infrastructure within the building. So, and I think one of the drivers that's really accelerating that is the basic availability of high-speed internet and the desire for the residents to just have really good high-speed internet. And they don't really care that much about traditional cable TV, and definitely don't care about phone service anymore. So I think that whole trend is also driving this idea for owners to begin to think about, you know, installing and owning and managing their own networks within the property, so that they can provide good high-speed internet to their residents, but they can also use that network to support the other technology initiatives that they're putting in place, like more complex and, you know, useful access control systems, where now instead of just the resident using a fob to get in the building, they're now giving out, you know, temporary use codes to pet walkers and pizza delivery people and Amazon and all those kind of folks to make deliveries right to their door. So that stuff is evolving and requiring more complex networks. And then they're also using much more sophisticated audio-visual stuff to give them the wow factor in the common areas. And we're seeing building management systems being deployed that are helping owners manage their building systems more. So the whole idea of moving from sort of disparate networks provided by somebody else to a more common network being provided and managed by the owners is a trend that we've been seeing. It's kind of begun to accelerate in the last 18 to 20 months or so, just because of the costs of bandwidth has gotten so cheap. And I think if we do continue to develop technologies around this COVID-19 event, that will only just accelerate that trend.
Yeah, and I mean that's completely understandable. I mean it's kind of that, I guess, advanced acceleration because of the nature of what's going on in the world, but then too, like you said, it's already been happening, and so it's just kind of propelled even further forward. And well, Steve, yeah. So Steve, thank you so much really for sharing your insight today on our first ever episode of our podcast and really diving into it. So Steve, if someone wanted to get in touch with you or RealPage, how might they do that?
Sure. So I can be found obviously on the RealPage website at realpage.com. They can also reach me at steve.sadler@realpage.com. And I do have a LinkedIn profile out there somewhere.
Yes, you do. It's Steve Sadler, oddly enough.
I think that's it. If you see Steve Sadler working for RealPage, that would be me.
Thank you all for tuning in. We hope you enjoyed today's episode. To learn more about our guest and their company, check out the show notes for the relevant links. If you would like to learn more about us here at Symphony, of course, subscribe to our podcast on our YouTube channel. And don't forget to follow us on LinkedIn and Facebook at Symphony Technology Solutions and on Instagram at Symphony Tech Solutions. Here at Symphony, our ultimate goal is to make harmonious music out of all the technological noise. And we hope today's episode helped in doing just that. See you next time.